In the late 1990s, Enron Corporation stood as a beacon of innovation, a Houston-based energy trading giant frequently lauded by Fortune magazine as America's most innovative company. From humble origins as a natural gas pipeline operator, Enron reinvented itself, venturing into vast, uncharted territories of financial markets. Its headquarters, a gleaming skyscraper, symbolized its soaring ambitions and perceived invincibility. This was a company that seemed to defy gravity, a darling of Wall Street, promising endless growth and unprecedented returns to its investors. But beneath the polished facade, a darker reality was beginning to take shape. At the helm of this rapidly expanding empire was Kenneth Lay, a charismatic economist and former government official. Lay envisioned Enron as more than just an energy company. He saw it as a financial services firm specializing in risk management, a pioneer in the burgeoning deregulated energy markets. His leadership fostered an aggressive, entrepreneurial culture, attracting top talent with promises of immense wealth. Lay preached a philosophy of free markets and minimal regulation, believing Enron could thrive by creating markets where none existed, transforming commodities into tradable financial instruments. This ideology would profoundly shape Enron's trajectory. In 1990, Kenneth Lay brought in Jeffrey Skilling, a brilliant and fiercely competitive consultant from McKinsey & Company. Skilling, with his innovative ideas and relentless drive, was tasked with transforming Enron's business model. He championed the asset-light strategy, shifting Enron away from owning physical pipelines and power plants towards trading energy and other commodities as if they were financial securities. Skilling's vision was to create a vast, liquid market for virtually anything, from bandwidth to weather derivatives. This intellectual shift was celebrated internally, but it also sowed the seeds of a profound detachment from tangible assets. One of Skilling's most significant introductions was the widespread adoption of mark-to-market accounting. This method allowed Enron to book the estimated future profits of long-term contracts immediately, rather than waiting for years as the revenue materialized. For example, if Enron signed a 10-year contract to provide power, it could instantly declare all 10 years' projected earnings as current income, based on highly speculative future market prices. This practice inflated earnings dramatically on paper, creating an illusion of robust profitability and fueling the company's impressive stock performance. It was a powerful tool, but one ripe for abuse. While legitimate in some contexts, mark-to-market accounting at Enron was applied to illiquid, complex contracts where future values were difficult, if not impossible, to predict accurately. There was no transparent market to mark these assets to, allowing Enron's executives to essentially create their own valuations. If the actual value of a contract declined later, those losses would be hidden or minimized. This created immense pressure to continually find new, ever larger deals to sustain the illusion of growth, as older, less profitable contracts would need to be revalued, potentially revealing past overstatements. It was a house of cards built on subjective estimates. To manage the financial risks and balance sheet implications of its aggressive accounting, Enron turned to Andrew Fastow, a sharp, ambitious executive who rose to become chief financial officer. Fastow was an undisputed financial wizard, capable of conjuring complex structures that baffled even seasoned bankers. His role was to create intricate partnerships that would make Enron's debt disappear from its balance sheet, while simultaneously enhancing its reported earnings. He was given unprecedented authority and a significant personal stake in these deals, creating a potent conflict of interest that would prove catastrophic. Fastow became the architect of Enron's financial trickery. Fastow's primary mechanism for manipulating Enron's financials was the creation of hundreds of special purpose entities, or SPEs. These were legally distinct partnerships, often offshore, designed to hold Enron's problematic assets or absorb its debt. By transferring assets to these SPEs, Enron could remove them from its own balance sheet, making its financial health appear stronger than it truly was. The catch was that for these SPEs to be truly off-balance sheet, outside investors had to hold at least 3% of their equity. Fastow cleverly orchestrated ways around this rule, often using Enron's own stock or guarantees, blurring the lines of true independence. Fastow personally managed many of these SPEs, including infamous ones like LJM and Chuco. These partnerships bought Enron's underperforming assets, such as stakes in unprofitable power plants, often at inflated prices. This allowed Enron to book immediate profits from the sale while simultaneously removing the failing assets from its books. The SPEs, however, were largely funded by Enron itself, either directly or through guarantees, meaning Enron retained the risk but masked it from investors. Fasto, and others, reaped millions in management fees from these entities, creating a profound conflict of interest that enriched insiders at the expense of the company's true financial health. The combination of mark-to-market accounting and SPEs created a dangerous cycle. Enron would book speculative future profits, then use SPEs to offload assets that weren't performing as expected, allowing them to book even more current profits. Any losses incurred by these assets would remain hidden within the SPEs. This elaborate structure artificially boosted Enron's earnings, masked its growing debt, and made the company appear far more successful and stable than it was. Analysts, swayed by Enron's charismatic leadership and complex financial reports, continued to recommend its stock, driving its price to dizzying heights, while the underlying fundamentals decayed. Inside Enron, a culture of aggressive performance and fear was cultivated. Employees were ranked and routinely fired if they didn't meet impossible targets, a system known as rank and yank. The pressure to generate ever-increasing profits was immense, driving many to participate in or overlook questionable accounting practices. Dissent was discouraged, and those who raised concerns were often sidelined or dismissed. This environment, fueled by large bonuses tied to reported earnings and stock options, incentivized short-term gains over long-term sustainability and ethical conduct. It was a company where questioning the methods was more dangerous than simply going along with them. Enron's ruthless pursuit of profit was vividly demonstrated during the California energy crisis of 2000 to 2001. As California moved to deregulate its electricity market, Enron traders exploited weaknesses in the system, manipulating supply and demand to drive up prices. Tactics included taking power plants offline, selling power out of state, and even encouraging consumers to reduce usage to create artificial shortages. These actions led to rolling blackouts, skyrocketing electricity bills, and immense public suffering across California. While not directly linked to the accounting fraud, it highlighted the company's predatory business ethics and disregard for social responsibility. Despite the outward appearance of success, cracks began to form internally. Sharon Watkins, an Enron vice president, became increasingly concerned about the company's accounting practices, particularly the partnerships managed by Fasto. In August 2001, she famously wrote a memo to Kenneth Lay, detailing her fears that Enron could implode in a wave of accounting scandals. Her warnings, however, were largely dismissed or downplayed by Lay and other executives. This internal dissent, a rare but courageous act, underscored the growing unease within the company about the sustainability and legality of its financial maneuvers. In August 2001, Jeffrey Skilling, then CEO, unexpectedly resigned after just 6 months in the position, citing personal reasons. His sudden departure, coming amidst growing market skepticism about Enron's opaque finances, sent ripples of concern through Wall Street. Lay reassumed the CEO role, publicly assuring investors that the company was in robust health. However, Skilling's exit removed one of the key architects of Enron's complex financial structure from daily oversight, leaving Lay to grapple with a system he had less direct involvement in creating. It was a clear sign that something was deeply amiss, even if the full scope was not yet public. The first major public challenge to Enron's narrative came from Bethany McLean, a reporter for Fortune magazine. In March 2001, months before Skilling's resignation, McLean penned an article titled "Is Enron Overpriced?" Her meticulous investigation questioned how Enron made its money, pointing out the lack of transparency in its financial statements and the opaque nature of its partnerships. She couldn't pinpoint specific fraud but highlighted the alarming lack of clarity. Enron executives dismissed her concerns as naive, but her article planted a crucial seed of doubt in the minds of investors and analysts, setting the stage for deeper scrutiny. As 2001 progressed, the questions intensified. Analysts struggled to understand Enron's complex financial statements, and its stock price, once a darling of Wall Street, began a precipitous decline. Concerns about the integrity of its reported earnings and the sheer volume of off-balance sheet debt grew louder. Enron attempted to reassure investors, but their explanations were often evasive and further fueled skepticism. The company's once unshakable reputation started to crumble under the weight of persistent inquiries. The market was losing faith, sensing that the emperor had no clothes, or at least, that his wardrobe was impossibly opaque. The final blow to Enron's solvency came from the credit rating agencies. As the true extent of Enron's debt and the precariousness of its SPEs became clearer, agencies like Moody's and Standard & Poor's began to downgrade Enron's credit rating. This was a death knell. A downgraded rating meant Enron's ability to borrow money or trade contracts depended on having significant cash reserves. Without the confidence of lenders, Enron's business model, heavily reliant on credit for energy trading, simply could not function. It triggered clauses in its contracts, demanding immediate repayment of billions of dollars. The game was up. Central to Enron's deception was its auditor, Arthur Andersen, one of the Big Five accounting firms. Andersen was responsible for independently verifying Enron's financial statements. However, the firm became deeply intertwined with Enron, acting more as a consultant than an impartial auditor. They not only approved Enron's dubious accounting practices but actively helped Fasto create the SPEs and hide debt. The fees Arthur Andersen earned from Enron were substantial, creating a powerful incentive to overlook irregularities. This conflict of interest ultimately destroyed Andersen's credibility and, tragically, led to its own downfall. As the SEC investigation loomed, Arthur Andersen employees at Enron's Houston offices began shredding thousands of documents related to their audits. This systematic destruction of evidence, ordered by Andersen's legal department, was a frantic attempt to cover up their complicity and prevent investigators from finding incriminating information. The sheer scale and deliberate nature of the shredding operation shocked the public and solidified the perception of a deliberate cover-up. It was not just a lapse in judgment, it was an act of obstruction of justice, signaling a criminal intent that would ultimately seal the fate of both Enron and its auditor. By October 2001, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission formally launched an investigation into Enron's accounting practices. The SEC's inquiry focused on the company's complex web of off-balance sheet partnerships and the potential for financial manipulation. This official scrutiny, combined with the continuous erosion of investor confidence, created a snowball effect. Enron was forced to admit that it had overstated its earnings by hundreds of millions of dollars over several years and that its balance sheet was significantly understated. These admissions were devastating, confirming the worst fears of investors and the public. With its credit rating decimated, its business model in tatters, and its reputation destroyed, Enron's options dwindled rapidly. Attempts to secure a bailout or a merger with a rival company, Dynegy, failed. On December 2, 2001, Enron Corporation filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. It was the largest corporate bankruptcy in U.S. history at the time, a monumental collapse that sent shockwaves across global financial markets. The fall of Enron was not just the failure of a company, it was a profound betrayal of trust, leaving behind a trail of devastated employees, shareholders, and a deeply damaged corporate landscape. The immediate aftermath of Enron's collapse was a human tragedy. Thousands of employees lost their jobs, often with little to no notice. Many had invested their life savings, their 401(k)s, and their pensions heavily in Enron stock, which became worthless overnight. Retirement funds vanished, and dreams for the future were shattered. The promise of a stable career and financial security, built on years of hard work, evaporated. This personal devastation extended beyond Enron's walls, affecting countless shareholders, vendors, and even the city of Houston itself, which had proudly housed the energy giant. The cost was truly immeasurable. The sheer scale of Enron's fraud and the apparent betrayal by its executives ignited widespread public outrage. There was a palpable sense of injustice as millions lost their savings while the architects of the scheme walked away with millions. The media extensively covered the scandal, revealing the shocking details of corporate greed and unethical practices. Politicians faced immense pressure to respond, to ensure such a catastrophe would never happen again. The Enron scandal quickly became a symbol of corporate malfeasance, eroding public trust in big business and demanding immediate legislative action to restore integrity. In response to Enron and other major corporate accounting scandals of the era, Congress passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002, SOX. This landmark legislation aimed to restore investor confidence by significantly increasing corporate responsibility and accountability. SOX mandated stricter auditing standards, established the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, CABE, and increased criminal penalties for corporate fraud. It also required CEOs and CFOs to personally certify the accuracy of their financial statements, making them directly liable for any misrepresentations. Sarbanes-Oxley fundamentally reshaped the landscape of corporate governance and financial reporting. As investigations progressed, Andrew Fastow became a key figure in unraveling Enron's intricate fraud. Facing dozens of charges, Fastow ultimately pleaded guilty in 2004 to 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering. In exchange for a reduced sentence, he agreed to cooperate with federal prosecutors, providing crucial testimony against Kenneth Lay and Jeffrey Skilling. His testimony shed light on the inner workings of the SPEs and the systematic deception orchestrated at the highest levels of the company. Fastow's cooperation was instrumental in securing convictions against his former superiors. Kenneth Lay and Jeffrey Skilling were eventually indicted on numerous charges related to their roles in the Enron scandal. Their trial, a highly anticipated event, began in January 2006. Prosecutors argued that Lay and Skilling had deliberately lied to investors and employees about Enron's financial health, while secretly enriching themselves. The defense, conversely, maintained that the executives were innocent, claiming Enron's collapse was due to market forces and negative media attention, not criminal wrongdoing. They asserted that they were unaware of the true extent of Fastow's schemes, painting themselves as victims of their CFO's deceit. In May 2006, after weeks of testimony and deliberation, a jury found both Kenneth Lay and Jeffrey Skilling guilty on a multitude of fraud and conspiracy charges. Lay was convicted on all 6 counts against him, while Skilling was found guilty on 19 of 28 counts, including 1 count of insider trading. The verdicts sent a powerful message that even the most powerful corporate executives would be held accountable for criminal deception. The jury rejected the defense's claims of ignorance, concluding that Lay and Skilling were fully aware of the widespread fraud that ultimately brought down their empire. Justice, it seemed, had finally been served. Just months after his conviction, in July 2006, Kenneth Lay died of a heart attack while awaiting sentencing. His death legally vacated his conviction, a controversial outcome that meant he would never serve time for his crimes. For many, this was a bitter pill, as the face of Enron's deception escaped final justice. Lay's legacy became forever intertwined with the scandal, a cautionary tale of unchecked power and ambition. His passing closed a chapter but did not diminish the profound impact his actions had on thousands of lives and on corporate ethics in America. Jeffrey Skilling was sentenced to 24 years in prison, a stark reminder of the severe penalties for corporate fraud. After several appeals and a resentencing, his term was reduced. Skilling was ultimately released from federal custody in 2019, having served over 12 years. His release brought renewed attention to the scandal and the enduring questions about corporate responsibility. Despite his time served, many felt that the punishment, especially compared to the devastation wrought, still fell short. Skilling's post-prison life remains largely out of the public eye, a quiet end to a once boisterous career that reshaped an industry. Arthur Andersen, the accounting firm that audited Enron, suffered a more immediate and arguably more complete downfall. In 2002, the firm was convicted of obstruction of justice for shredding Enron-related documents. Although the Supreme Court later overturned the conviction on technical grounds, the damage was irreversible. The conviction, even temporarily, shattered public trust and led to a mass exodus of clients and employees. Arthur Andersen, once a global accounting powerhouse, effectively ceased to exist, serving as a powerful warning to other firms about the severe consequences of compromising ethical standards for profit. Its collapse was unprecedented. The Enron scandal left an indelible mark on corporate America, fundamentally altering how companies operate and are perceived. It fostered a deep-seated public mistrust in corporate executives and financial institutions, a sentiment that continues to echo today. The fraud exposed systemic weaknesses in accounting standards, corporate governance, and regulatory oversight. The narrative of the smartest guys in the room who manipulated the system for personal gain became a cautionary tale, forever changing the relationship between corporations, investors, and the public. Its legacy is a stark reminder of the fragile nature of trust. The scandal forced a crucial re-evaluation of corporate governance structures. It underscored the importance of independent boards of directors, robust audit committees, and ethical leadership. The Sarbanes-Oxley Act was a direct response, aiming to strengthen these mechanisms and prevent future Enrons. While some argue SOX imposed excessive burdens, its intent was clear: to protect investors and maintain market integrity. The core lesson was that unchecked executive power, combined with lax oversight and a culture of greed, can lead to catastrophic consequences, regardless of a company's initial innovative spirit or market dominance. Enron's financial structures were deliberately complex, designed to obscure rather than reveal. This inherent opacity, coupled with the impressive financial acumen of its executives, often intimidated analysts and regulators, making it difficult to uncover the fraud until it was too late. The scandal highlighted the danger of financial innovation without transparency and accountability. It taught the world that dazzling financial products, if not grounded in ethical practices and clear reporting, can become instruments of deception, ultimately collapsing under their own weight. The allure of complexity proved to be Enron's greatest weapon and its ultimate undoing. The Enron scandal also brought into sharp focus the critical role of whistleblowers like Sharon Watkins. Her courageous act of speaking out internally, despite the risks to her career, provided an early, albeit ignored, warning signal. The subsequent legislative and corporate reforms recognized the need to protect and incentivize whistleblowers, establishing mechanisms for safe reporting of corporate wrongdoing. Her story became an inspiration, demonstrating that individual integrity can challenge powerful institutions, even if the immediate impact isn't always successful. Protecting those who speak truth to power is now a cornerstone of corporate ethics. Enron's rise was inextricably linked to the era of financial deregulation, particularly in the energy sector. Advocates argued that deregulation fostered innovation and efficiency. However, Enron demonstrated how, without adequate oversight, deregulation could create fertile ground for manipulation and exploitation. The scandal fueled a significant debate about the appropriate balance between free markets and necessary regulatory controls. It forced a reckoning with the idea that while markets can be powerful engines of growth, they also require robust rules and vigilant enforcement to prevent abuse and protect the public interest from unrestrained greed. Ultimately, the Enron scandal is a story of unbridled greed. The pursuit of ever-increasing profits and personal enrichment by a few executives led to the devastation of thousands of lives. It exposed how a company, once celebrated for its innovation, could devolve into a criminal enterprise through a series of increasingly unethical and illegal decisions. The desire to maintain a soaring stock price at all costs overshadowed any sense of corporate responsibility or integrity. The shadow of Enron's greed continues to serve as a potent warning against the seductive power of wealth when left unchecked by morality and accountability. More than 2 decades later, the Enron scandal remains profoundly relevant. Its lessons resonate in every boardroom, every accounting firm, and every regulatory body. It is a constant reminder that financial transparency, ethical leadership, and robust oversight are not mere formalities but essential safeguards for economic stability and public trust. As financial markets evolve and new technologies emerge, the mechanisms of fraud may change, but the underlying human tendencies of ambition and greed remain. The story of Enron serves as an enduring case study, compelling us to stay vigilant against the ever-present potential for corporate malfeasance. The title, "The Smartest Guys in the Room," became synonymous with Enron. Initially meant as a compliment, it quickly became a bitter irony. It encapsulated the arrogance and intellectual hubris that pervaded the company. They believed they were smarter than the markets, smarter than the regulators, and smarter than traditional accounting principles. Ultimately, their perceived brilliance was their downfall. The Enron scandal stands as a monument to the dangers of corporate hubris, a powerful narrative about how innovation, when detached from ethics, can lead not to progress, but to utter destruction. The room, in the end, was not smart enough. The Enron scandal serves as a permanent warning embedded in the fabric of modern finance. It's a testament to how quickly a reputation can be built and how swiftly it can be shattered by a foundation built on deceit. The fall of Enron left scars that run deep in the lives of former employees, in the shattered trust of investors, and in the reinforced necessity for stringent corporate oversight. While the company itself is long gone, its story continues to be taught in business schools, serving as a cautionary tale of the devastating consequences when greed, power, and unchecked innovation combine to subvert the very principles of ethical business. A cautionary tale for all time.